Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. We'll just wait for a few more minutes for everybody to join us, and we'll kick it off. Thank you for your patience. All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everybody joining us around the world. My name is Samar Kamal. I am your host today. We lead marketing at Mine. Today, we're in Tel Aviv. I have next to me the co-founder and the chief product officer, Kobe Nissan. We have an exciting release to speak with you today. And we're honored to also have Juta Williams, an industry veteran, someone that's been doing data privacy for the last 20 years, working for amazing companies like Google and Facebook and Twitter. Really, I think you've been doing this data privacy before data privacy really became a mainstream issue. So we're honored to have you today.
That's wonderful to be here. And I like the word veteran because it includes all the war wounds that come along with this journey. But yeah, it's wonderful to come and talk about a really important topic to me. It's data mapping and data classification and the kind of the action technology kind of application side of a lot of the data privacy programs we have all been kind of slugging through the last 20 or so years.
Indeed. Thank you, Juta. Yeah, so as I mentioned, we're announcing a couple of new functionalities to our platform today: continuous data classification and smart data sampling. We really believe that with this new functionality, we are redefining how data classification is done, helping and empowering data privacy professionals. At Mind, we're all about empowering that data privacy professional because we believe that they are understaffed and they are under a tight budget. And we're all about helping them to kick off those data privacy programs with the least reliance and dependence on other teams. With that said, I wanted to talk a little bit about the status quo and the current challenges. We believe that with this new functionality, we are redefining the way that this is done and challenging that status quo. So maybe, Juta, we can start with that status quo, and you could walk us through a little bit maybe of the challenges that you hear from your colleagues, if you will, about how the process is done, within the data privacy program, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So, privacy as a function has evolved quite a lot in the last, I would say 3 or 4 years, especially, but certainly over the last 20 years. And for the most part, privacy began as a very policy-centric or very policy-heavy function within a business. And so a lot of data classification activities and work would fall into the policy realm. And those policies would be written and they'd be well-intended and they'd categorize information across a kind of a flat structure, public, confidential, or sensitive. And that information would be sent out into the business with the hope and really just a really inkling of hope that they be applied in some meaningful way that would deliver some sort of security or regulatory benefit. And all of that's been kind of the status quo for probably 15 or more years, where policies were written, categorizations were defined, really just a box and kind of create some sort of boundary around regulatory obligation and data. But those policy criteria weren't very clear. So guidance was often not very technical. It was often not tied to any kind of technical capability or function. And then understanding how those policies were applied wasn't really typically part of most security frameworks. So if you were seeking ISO certification or obtaining a SOC related report, classification policies were a checkbox, but how you applied them and how effectively applied them wasn't necessarily part of your validation work. That's changing though, and it's changing significantly, where there's now new enforcement action related to whether or not you met your internal classification and handling policies. So that becomes a really interesting evolutionary need within product and within security function and within your engineering teams, because now you need to have more technical methods for monitoring whether or not these classification and handling policies are being applied, and then also how effectively. So I think it's a really important evolution in any privacy program to start to understand that these existing administrative controls need to translate or transform into technical controls that deliver insights and help drive prioritization of your actions. And that's one of the things I'm really excited about, and I'll hand this back to Kobe and to Samer to talk about, is that technology that delivers those insights and helps you know where to prioritize your effort in these really limited bandwidth and budgeted programs is incredibly valuable, especially as we move into a new enforcement age.
Yeah, absolutely, Jutta. These are exactly the challenges that we speak about every day at Mine with our customers and prospects, and what we are focusing on, enabling them, using our technology to, kick off those projects quickly. So any thoughts on what Jutta mentioned, Kobe?
Yeah, I think that iterating on, from a perspective of a vendor that meets kind of lots of clients and meet their needs from the day-to-day perspective, it's kind of, pretty much prevalent that there are some difficulties or challenges between for privacy teams to actually stress out the value that they need to bring to the organization across with the security and the IT team. So sometimes it is being perceived as, this is a technological challenge, whereas there is a challenge of communicating the value that it will actually bring to the organization, not only from a privacy standpoint, but it's also for other adjacent processes within the company.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, absolutely. So I think at this point, we're happy to dive into the solution itself and those new functionalities. So please, Kobe, kick it off.
All right. Okay, so addressing the points that of the status quo, as Julia kind of mentioned, the first thing I would like to do is kind of give some orientation and describe where we are when we think about when you think of data mapping and the entire solution. So of course, Mine PrivacyOps do provide the other modules such as the DSR handling, the consent management, everything that is the client facing and operational. However, we want to focus here on the data mapping stack. And what we try to do here is not only taking the technological standpoint of doing the classification itself, which we are going to focus here today, but we are trying to create a pillar-based approach, meaning a full journey that will allow the privacy team to actually get from point A to point Z and place the control. So our main focus is not only about deriving and understanding what data we have and where it is being processed or stored, but it is mostly about how we can help you put down the controls in a more easy way. So we give you the insights of where do I need to focus, what tasks do I need to generate, what things needs to be done in the organization in order to make the privacy program in place properly. And of course, we have the compliance level as well, which is part of the job and the things that the privacy teams needs to produce. And at the end of it, kind of closing with policies and governance. So we want to focus here. This is where I want to dive in with the new approaches we are bringing. Those two pillars are kind of the foundation of the program, asking or answering the question of where the data is. Those are the data sources discovery. And the second one is classifying and understanding what data I have in those specific systems. So if we think about the first pillar, what we've learned that it will be either very optimistic or naive to think that we can connect to a single source of truth, maybe the single sign-on or the identification platform of the organization, and with that we will get enough information to understand where we have those systems. What we've learned during our work here is that you do need to connect multiple sources in order to get a full view, a full picture, because the organization data sources are very dynamic. Not everything is being monitored. At the end of the day, those are human beings that are using and playing around with those systems. And in order to adjust ourselves and not changing how the organization operationalizes, we want to connect multiple sources to get the full picture. On the result of it, I think what we put special focus on is not only on getting the list of which data sources the organization have that store or process data, but also provide as much context as possible. So we kind of generated our proprietary privacy AI solution that try to identify usage. What systems am I using? How did we get the data? Did it came from user-generated content, or was it something that was produced internally? So this is where we put lots of emphasis in providing the privacy professional the insights that they need in order to make this data into a real control in the organization. If we go ahead and think about data classification, this is the second pillar in the diagram. Now we want to understand what data we have inside. So the classic industry approach is scan all systems. This is what Jutta described at the beginning. Apply the technological algorithms, all the heavy technology in order to integrate to all systems, scan through all data, but it raises some concerns about it's heavy on the infrastructure. Sometimes it has some performance associated with it. It's time consuming, not cost effective. So you have lots of questions associated with that when you want to connect a tech stack of hundreds of data sources. So in order to address that, what Mine is trying to bring to the table, and that's like what we are announcing here today, is a different approach that tries to be much more effective and kind of address the problems or the concerns of the privacy professionals. So what we have done here is to actually provide a toolkit of 3 different approaches, 3 different methods to classify data in each one of those data sources. So full scan is one of them. We are going to talk about it, but I want to start here in context-based analysis. So in our research, we identified that there are something like 80%, 85%, this is the benchmark that we can bring, of systems, SaaS platforms mainly, that are kind of very specific in their service that they provide, and very structured. For those systems, we can leverage our Mine Privacy AI, I will present in the next slide, and provide a prediction of what data you, in high probability, stored and processed there. You don't have to do it, you can connect the integration, but this is an alternative in order to become more cost effective and do the balancing between going on full-blown on integration or leveraging the context-based privacy AI solution here. Full scan, of course, is another option, but Mine also provide the smart data sampling, meaning that what on our research we identified that oftentimes before a company will go ahead full-blown on a full scan and scan 300 terabytes of information on an S3 bucket, for example, it is much more efficient to do like a smart sampling on a subset of it, 10% of the bucket, and get a picture of what I have inside of it for the entire bucket. So this is kind of where we are going here with the smart sampling. If we dive a little bit deeper and understand what context-based analysis really means, essentially we are trying to create a prediction here. we take insights from the system's legal and technical documents. We take inputs from the system's capabilities and features, what service this specific system provides, and we adjust it to the actual client, to you. Once we take all those three inputs, we can provide a prediction of, hey, if you are using company X, a system X, a company in your size, shape, and form, in high probability, these are the data that you store or process, and you can run a vetting process around it. Now, in terms of smart data sampling, so instead of scanning the entire system, what we will do is we will scan parts of it in a smart way. We will do it in a way that will allow us to get a full picture of what you have inside, and we will provide the organization with diagnostics and statistics so they can have a better understanding of what and how they use the system. In this point, it will be great as an input for the privacy teams to apply the controls that they need. But if needed, of course, they can go ahead and run the full scan on the selected systems that are mostly concerns for them. So here you have the example. So here you go, like with the overall solution. The company can now choose the right tooling for the right and match it with the right system. That's how Mine envision, and this is what we are announcing here today. This is the specific tooling of context-based smart sampling and full scan that a company can leverage in order to balance between the heavy technology and integrations versus other solutions that can be more effective. I think we have to finish to wrap up with this before we jump into the demo itself. Basically, what we are doing, as I mentioned before, we will allow and we will support companies with the auditable reports, your ROPA, your DPIA, your data flow. Obviously, it's something that the system will provide lots of automation on. But for us, the important point is to help the privacy teams identify the areas of focus. Where do I need to focus? What do I need to do next? Where do I have like the most potential risks? This is what we strive to do, and we have pride on here at Mine.
Excellent. Thank you, Kobe. Yeah, I think for me, one of the most exciting things is that ability of automation end to end, really, from that data discovery and mapping all the way to those auditable reports that you mentioned, basically an end to end data privacy program. Juta, would love to hear your thoughts. How would you compare this to that status quo that we talked about at the beginning? Yeah, initial thoughts, please.
Right. And there's a really great question in the chat as well from Philip about compilation as well as complication of data, and especially unstructured data. I can tell you that after working in large data systems and trying to understand the proliferation of data, especially as it relates to unstructured data types, healthcare in particular experiences this phenomenon almost more so than even the big tech environments that I've worked in, is that data that's in free text form and particularly when it's embedded in chats, or in my case, it was clinical notes, finding identifiers within really unstructured data sets is a huge challenge for a number of reasons. One is just managing the risk and making sure you're applying the right security controls, but also in de-identification of that data so you can leverage and use it for all kinds of additional purposes. And without machine learning and the advancements of machine learning, I would say that it was an impossible task. When we were looking at really large clinical note fields, we were basically excluding anything that was unstructured from any clinical research for probably 15 or more years. And that led to less impressive clinical outcomes. It led to mistakes. It led to less precise clinical pathway development for any kind of a care delivery solution sets. But with the advent of machine learning and especially the tools that Kobe and team at Mine have produced, you can actually look at context around information to really clearly identify identifiers in new ways. So I'll use a number as an example. In healthcare, a 6-digit number could be a number of things. It could be a dosage, it could be a date of service, it could be an MRN number. 2 out of the 3 of those are identifiers, and one of them is a really important clinical piece of data for any kind of research project. without understanding and having natural language processing to understand contextual information before and after that 6-digit number, we wouldn't have been able to identify that information, or we might have triaged it out inappropriately and reduced the validity of the data set. So I would say that compilation and complication are conjoined, because when you can combine data, create context awareness around information within unstructured data sets, and then create both a risk posture as well as a strategy for applying operational controls like de-identification or segmentation, or any number of other technical controls that you can apply once you've labeled that data. It makes the allowable uses of data richer. It makes your operational teams much happier, but it also helps you reduce and manage the risk really effectively. So yes, as this is presented, and as I've seen it work in the back end, it really does work. It is a super huge advancement in managing risk, but also creating opportunity for operational teams.
Indeed. Thanks, Jutha. Something I like that you took that question, Jutha. Thank you. Another question came in. I think it's worthy to take now before the demo.
Yep.
Is, Kobe, you mentioned the phrase, bringing data to life.
Yeah.
Can you maybe double click on that? And what do you mean really as you go through that process?
Sure. So the idea is, if we go all the way up here, so oftentimes what we see with our clients is that, they get here in this point, we have found hundreds of data sources. We have found, hundreds of and thousands of data types and that are, being processed and stored everywhere. And now the privacy team needs to actually go and audit those and go through all of them in order to take some decisions and place the relevant controls and understand the context of what they are doing. So what we're trying to do when we say bringing data privacy into life is we're trying to take those results, put some context and insights to them in order to make this an operational task. Here, those are the areas of privacy risk. You have here an opportunity to run through data minimization process. You have here an opportunity to have a close look on some access management potential issues. Here are some concerns about the cyber posture risk of the data sources that are holding highly sensitive information. Here we have some issues around data transfer. So the system is trying to provide you with some smart AI. It's trying to provide you those suggestions, those insights, so you can really focus on the areas that really matters, rather than trying to scan, digest so much information that at the end of the day it will be almost impossible to fit and make it an operational ongoing task, and not just a yearly or semi-yearly review or something like that.
Thanks, Kobe. Very good. And yeah, please, everybody, feel free to drop your questions. We'll take them as we go on. But I think this is a good time to kick off the demo and show the product.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, while you start that, Philip, I would suggest that this is a really important question to ask yourself and to configure for your business. I can tell you that for some businesses, sweeping frequently would be very costly from a processor standpoint and might not be recommended. And for other businesses, maybe you have lots and lots of compute, and maybe you have the ability to do it more frequently. As far as deriving more value with sweeping more frequently, I think that more often than not, your processes are designed for the outcomes you enjoy. And so unless you're changing processes, I'm not sure that additional sweeps is going to create more value. It's really more of I would do it frequently enough that you feel confident that this isn't stale data or stale understanding of where your data lives. But I don't know that like everyday sweeps or even 100% sampled sweeps, which we'll talk about in a little bit, would be deriving more value for your program.
Thank you, Jutha. Very good. Yeah, Kobe, please.
All right, so we want to focus the demo on the data classification itself. Now, in terms of auto-discovery, what you see here on the screen is basically a demo where we connected all three, SSO, website scan, and the email discovery. So we have three inputs into the auto-discovery that allows the system to kind of create this list. This list was generated automatically, so we have 179 data sources. It's still scanning, kicked in like about an hour ago. So the system is continuously scanning all those sources, and as they come, it adds more and more data sources. only in this point, we can already see all the employees that are connected and are relevant to each one of those platforms. Right now, we can start seeing services that has lots of employees, services that has quite a few employees, so we understand the usage level of those platforms if we need to kind of understand those. And we can identify systems with power users inside of them, systems that are being used more often than others. So as we can see here, we have some 2 power users as opposed to the rest of them. So we can address some questions and identify them as people that we want to talk to. So the system knows how to do that. That's another implementation of the AI. Now, we talked about context-based, sample, and full scan. I want to start with the context-based here. We talked about the triangle of inputs. So if I click here, find data, here I want to generate the context-based analysis. The first question that we're going to ask is we're going to try to understand where the company is, what type of industry. Of course, there are more analysis that we're doing, but in the demo, try to kind of simplify it. Basically, here we asked about the industry in order to tailor it to your own needs. And now what we have done, the system produced an analysis of the privacy policy, terms of use, all the legal documents of those companies, and also analyze the feature that those companies are providing. And now I can say that if we use Stripe, a company in this size, shape, and form, here is the catalog of data types or data categories that we probably use. Of course, we put everything under the realms of frameworks. So we support all the frameworks of the standard frameworks, PII, GDPR, PCI, PHI. And a company can create their own custom frameworks in order to do this analysis. So that's like to demonstrate the machine learning. We do the same thing with the processing activities in order to create a baseline for Europa, although I'm not going to enter that in this demo, and stay tuned for next webinars for that. Now, once we have that, if we go here to the business impact tab, we already here, without doing any integration just yet, are able to provide the privacy team some insights. Here are systems that we identified as actively being used. So you can start working on those for your compliance reports. But here are systems that we see as questionable necessity. So maybe you need to take those and kind of go ahead and apply another task, another process in order to decommission some of those. If we take the employees versus data sensitivity tab here, we want to see if we have a potential of misconduct of sensitive data. So now we see that we have systems with lots of access of employees with highly sensitive data. So the system now is flagging for me that those are areas that I want to focus as a privacy professional. Here are some areas that might be tricky for me, and I want to see, do we have the relevant controls, the accurate controls for access management? We can do the same thing with cyber posture. So let's see if we have any data source that holds sensitive information with a problematic cyber posture. In this case, we see that we are kind of in a good zone. So those are the insights and how we bring privacy to life. And if we decided now to do another a deeper analysis, so I'm going to switch to
actually
another.
Kobe, I'm wondering,
go ahead.
yeah, please, Juta, maybe that you can give us like a live or operational example, for instance, that you would like. How would you want to use this?
All right. So yeah, can you go back to that last view with your risk profile? Because I love this view. This is one of my favorite views of it. I don't know how many of you sit in board meetings and they ask you about whether or not privacy is effective at your company, but I had to give quarterly updates to my audit committee of the board, and then monthly updates to my CEO on kind of the progress to date. As a non-revenue generating part of the business, you always have to justify your purpose and why you need growth or why you are actively using the investment that the company's made. These sorts of graphical representations are super helpful in explaining, and the fact that they're real time, that these are like active, this is like actionable work that you can do to demonstrate moving your risk posture from one position to the next. These are the sorts of graphical representations that are amazing when you're talking to executives or about the importance of privacy and the investments that they're making and their impact on the business. Now, I wouldn't necessarily show, I actually would. I would show these to a regulator if they came and asked me if I had an active kind of continually optimizing program. At least in the United States, that's an obligation for many regulatory frameworks, is that you're demonstrating that you have monitoring tools in place, that you're taking action, and that you're constantly improving. And so kind of demonstrating over the course of time that you're moving the needle and addressing some of these high risk, high sensitivity alerts. All of this is operational metrics and measurements that are great when you're trying to report the benefit of a program whose real benefit is that you didn't let anything bad happen, right? So these sorts of insights and the metrics you can derive from these sorts of insights are incredibly helpful in justifying program. So I would say that more than almost anything is sometimes the hardest thing to do as a privacy operational team, is demonstrating the improvement on risk.
Yeah, great. Exactly, Jutta. Actually, another question I would love to pause right here, from Tel, the SaaS integrations that you showed us, Kobe, the users, are they automatically detected, or do they have to be inserted manually?
Automatically detected. So that's the benefit of, it depends on the method that you use. If you use, we have 3 or 4 methods to do the auto discovery that will allow you to automatically get all the employees. But not only that, we actually shade, if I switch back to the demo environment. So we actually shed lots of light on those employees. We see the employees, we see the email, the account name, if it's active or inactive, the organizational path, the role, when was the last login, the data sources that each employee has, and the discovery method that you've used in order to identify them. So the answer is automatic, and we actually add more granular information metadata around that.
Can you go back? I have one more recommendation for folks on the call. I don't know about you, but I always had a bit of tension between a privacy program and a security program, and the requirements I would send over the wall, and how much effort and work was required in order for them to answer the questions. This is kind of a self-service tool that helps you understand and maybe reduce the dependence on some of those really overtaxed and sometimes very difficult to engage teams to get the insights necessary for you to provide your regulatory and internal reporting. Access control is one of those really contentious areas between a security and privacy program. Who owns it? Who's responsible for it? I felt in my role that I was accountable for it, if not responsible for it, and trying to divide that responsibility and accountability was very difficult. This helped me understand that I could offer a lot of value back to the security team by delivering some insights that are actually hard to derive from other kind of access management tool sets. So between AWS IAM or perhaps like an SSO vendor or supplier, they would have this data embedded in the product, but there was quite a bit of analytic work to produce a really useful resource like this that I could hand off for a SOC 2 report or to support an ISO certification audit. This kind of insight I felt was kind of a hybrid in-between state that allowed me to collect the information, report it, and keep as much work off of a really taxed organization or group like IT or identity and access control.
Very good. Thank you, Jutta. Another question that came in, Kobe.
Go ahead.
I'm going to bug you with everything before moving on. So cyber posture, I think on one of the screens that you showed us, cyber posture. Can you maybe double click on that and give us a little bit of, what is included in
Yeah,
there?
sure. So what we do here, if I go to risk management, essentially for each one of those data sources, we enrich the data with the cyber posture of the source. So cyber posture means that we scan all the external assets of the company and try to think like a potential, if you will, a bad guy. We try to find all the vulnerabilities that we can identify externally, grade all of them. Once we find all the issues, we provide a score, which is called the cyber posture rating. This is not a vendor management tool, but we provide you with a cyber posture rating in order to be able to get the focus point for your privacy program. That's the idea of what we have behind this.
Very good. Thank you, Kobe. All right.
So I think we are in data classification webinar. So I do want to present to you how we run the data classification with integrations. So this is why I switch here to another active account where I have an S3 bucket connected to it, and kind of demonstrating how that works. So if I have an S3 bucket, it's one of the thing on my list. I can go ahead, scroll down, run the connectors. All the integrations are no code. They are developed by us. So we run the integration, set up the content discovery, and now we can see the results. And if we see the results here, this is like the sampling that I was talking about. So we have here the data types. We classify over 160 different data points in all standard frameworks. And of course, you can create your own custom frameworks if you want the system to be more tailored to your own industry-specific needs. And then if you identify anything that is outside of the ordinary, the system, as I mentioned before, it tries to empower the privacy team. So we identify something that is out of the ordinary, ethnicity, something that is that requires your attention. It's in low numbers and highly sensitive. So you can actually click view, and you have the path in order to go in, dig deeper, and see where the system classified this specific data type. Everything here is on a sample mode, so you can get here view data source. You can see the reports and statistics. You get the full diagnostics. And then once you're ready, if you decided to, you can apply a full scan on the data source. Having a full scan is great because it's great for certain use cases. In case you want to conduct a specific enforcement on a data source, you can go ahead and say, I don't want to allow for any GDPR special information to ever get into the Amazon AWS S3. So you set up the policy, and anytime you get a policy violation, it will be alerted you in the designated place in the dashboard. So that's kind of what I wanted to share around data classification. We are already over time, I believe. So I'll pause here, and we are glad to kind of continue the conversation with anyone that wants to get a more deeper analysis of those features and capabilities.
Thanks. It's a lot for sure, Kobe, to show at once. And definitely, as Kobe mentioned, we'll go through the rest of the stack that he mentioned in upcoming webinars. So definitely be on the lookout for more things to come in. If there's more urgency, if you will, feel free to reach out to us, sales@saymine.com. Happy to give you a dedicated demo based on your environment. I'd love to squeeze maybe one more question, before is, regarding those regulations that you mentioned, how proactive are we to keep up with things as they continue to evolve?
So this is great. I love the question because that's part of our job. Our job is to be privacy regulation agnostic. We make sure that we are in line with all the high standards. And actually, in order to do that, we surround ourselves with industry professionals such as Juta to make sure that we are the top of our game in that aspect.
I challenge them extensively on the what next. What does this produce other than news? So news is very dangerous from a regulatory standpoint. If it's delivering a whole bunch of bad news that says, hey, you have risk everywhere, sucks to be you, that's not going to help you sell to a CFO, Philip, or anyone else. And it's going to actually increase your liability regulatorily. I really challenge them to really think, and what would a professional do with that information? And how do you make it easier for them to use it for that next step? Even in the last example, having the full path to the S3 bucket and a recommendation and account is so much more informative for a data management team than saying, hey, we found some identifiers in S3, because then they have to go build a crawler. They have to build the next steps. This provides actionable next steps and a really easy JIRA ticket to assign. So I guess my suggestion here is that they're thinking one step beyond news and into actionable intelligence. And I think that that's a pretty amazing leap forward in the technology.
Thank you, Juta. Those are humbling words. Thank you much. We continue our mission, hopefully. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Again, feel free to reach out to us, sales@saymine.com if needed. And looking forward to see you on the next webinar. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.